On today's episode of Anime Afterthought Made in Abyss Season 2, Episode 10, All That You Gather. This is an absolute masterclass in narrative writing. There is an actual character who actually feels the way I do. To be honest, it's quite comforting knowing that there's a character who represents my internal conflict, the emotional strife that the story shrewdly yet skillfully led me to feel. On one hand, we have Fapita, the literal embodiment of Iramui's rage and the arbiter of her vengeance, and on the other is Iruburu, the safe haven of those lost souls called to the abyss. Without a doubt, Iramui deserves retribution to finally be set free, but to all those who call Iruburu home, do they deserve to be condemned to death? Simply put, I'm torn, and this is the exact predicament in which we find Reg, burdened with the choice between keeping a promise he doesn't remember making and saving villagers he barely knows. Except that's not entirely accurate. Although he can't remember the particulars, it seems those feelings and emotions still linger, and are finally bubbling to the surface when he begins his confrontation with Fapita. Luckily for the viewer, we're blessed with flashbacks. Finally, some more backstory on this mysterious little robo boy. So everything we were told to believe is apparently true. On his journey to the surface to find his own Haku, Reg just happened to stumble across an out-of-commission Gabaroon and a very apprehensive and vulnerable creature, one that he himself would eventually name Fapita, Fa for noble maiden, and Apita for immortal one, literally the immortal princess. And that in itself is so poetically beautiful. I mean, the one thing she wasn't able to inherit from her mother was a name, and then just the look on her face, how giddy she is when she actually is given one. No wonder there's this bond, this connection formed between Fapita and Reg. She's even able to open up to him about her mother and her overall goal, the destruction of Iruburu, and thus setting her mother free. But it's what Gabaroon says that still lingers with me, that Fapita is well aware of the society that has been built inside of Iruburu, that she is well aware of the consequences from her actions, and yet she is still willing to go through with her plan, because it's just her nature. She was born that way. This, mixed with the abduction of Prushka, shows that she's not some primitive beast fueled solely by her desire for vengeance, that she's intelligent, she understands cause and effects, and she knows the repercussions of her actions, and yet she has still chosen this path. All this is accomplishing is making the decision that much more nail-bitingly, gut-wrenchingly difficult. For us, the viewer, but even more so for Reg. He somehow has to come to terms with this emotional dissonance, all while getting his ass handed to him by the girl who I think he genuinely has feelings for. But hey, at least we get front row tickets to this prize fight, and boy howdy is it ever. This has got to be the best episode of the season so far. The animation is on point, the art is horrifically bloody, the voice acting was so top notch. You can feel Fapita's emotions. I mean, I was mentally preparing myself for a massacre, but to be honest, I didn't think it'd look this good. And I have to say, the climactic battle is the perfect culmination of season 2. We have been building to this since episode freaking 1. Seeing Fapita's vengeance take shape while her carnage unfolds is horrific yet somehow cathartic. But seeing the princess stand atop a mountain of her victims as her eyes begin to deform, you're left to assume that her wrath is taking over. This is until she shows that she still has enough sense of self to explain why she had taken Prushka in the first place, why she tested Riko's and the stone person's bond, and was even insulted when they used the White Whistle's ability to transform Reg, another ability introduced mere episodes ago, which ties in just so naturally. And let's face it, he needed the power up. I mean, she had her entire fist down your throat, brah, straight beating your ass from the inside out. And this action is just so perfectly paired with all those flashbacks. All the meanwhile, Fapita becoming increasingly more frustrated that Reg can't remember their past. But of course, this back and forth can't last forever, even though Fapita's hopped up on all that rage, and Reg has been supercharged by the White Whistle, the fight must reach its inevitable conclusion. And so it does, with White Reg overpowering the Narihara princess. And yet Reg finds himself unable to attack. With all those long since locked up emotions finally rising to the surface, all he can do is cry and voice how he feels. The hypocrisy of wanting to help her and stop her all at the same time. A naive but oh so relatable perspective we find ourselves in now. One that Fapita is able to take advantage of, and simply put, it's lights out for Reg. I mean, after that, don't you have to ask yourself, how can a relationship be this new, but also be so freaking complicated? I mean, it's second only to Nanachi and Midi, but my god, is it rising fast. Speaking of Nanachi and Midi, it's time for their current story arc to reach its natural conclusion, one that is both beautiful and melancholy. With Iruburu crumbling around them, Bailoff finally reveals the meaning to his actions, that the flashbacks Nanachi dreamed of were in fact his memories converted to smells. Now the inheritor of his value, his longing, impurity, joy, and pain, she has a choice to make: stay in Iruburu with Midi, or simply walk beyond its boundaries and say goodbye. Another difficult choice. On one hand, this is the one thing Nanachi has prayed for, to be reunited with Midi in the Abyss. And on the other hand, this Midi shouldn't or even wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the atrocities done to Irumui. And I respect her choice. I mean, it's easier to believe a dream when the reality is such a nightmare. But it does give hope. I mean, it was a 1 in a million shot, but she was able to find Midi again in the Abyss. So maybe she can do it again. But that doesn't mean this goodbye is any less sad. Slowly walking beyond the boundary of the city, Midi begins to disappear, as Nanachi once again reaffirms their promise, that one day again they will reunite in the Abyss. But it's not just Midi that Nanachi has to say her farewells to. A group of Narihata seem to have taken a liking to her, and they even give her a going away present that won't disappear, something that'll live on in her memory. Hell, even Bailoff admits to taking a liking to these kids, as we see him too leaving the boundary of Iruburu. Built a little more sturdy than your average Narihata, and it's kind of a given seeing he is the limbs of Iruburu. It does make you wonder though, right? If Fapita is the embodiment of desire, Jirarimo is will, and Bailoff is limbs? What the heck is Wazukine? Weird, creepy, wooden face tentacle monster thingy? Seriously, I don't know what he's expecting Reg to do. He has high hopes for him to do something, and hopefully they reveal it in the next 2 episodes, because yeah, we only got a couple left. Overall, I absolutely love today's episode. It's probably my favorite of the series so far. Like I said, it's that perfect culmination that we've been building towards since the very beginning of this season. The narrative foundation is set. Now all we have to do is sit back and watch. Anyways, you know what time it is. Let's get to the cringe. Emotions running high in today's episode, but can the same be said for the cringe? Let's find out. And there we have it. Today's episode ranks mildly unsettling. Like I said before, this one's more emotionally charged than cringe-inducing. Maybe I become a little desensitized after Irumui. Hell, the only thing that came close was maybe Corpse Mountain or that trick with the eyeball. But what resonates with me most in today's episode is the heartbreak I feel for Midi and Nanachi, and the conflict I feel between Fapita and Reg. I just don't think those emotions are cringeworthy. And with that, we send you back to your originally scheduled programming. Like I said, I think this is my favorite episode of the series so far. Even for me, outpacing the emotionally devastating movie, Dawn of the Deep Soul. Seeing everything finally come together is so gratifying. But I have to know, what did you guys think of today's episode? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Do you want some more of it? Well, I do. So with all that being said and more Made in Abyss next week, I honestly cannot wait for future episodes.